All right, so here we have our gasifier. This is the device that's going to aid in our thermal decomposition of wood or whatever fuel we're using. So up here is our hopper. This is where we hold the wood. And right about this layer is where we're starting to drive those volatiles off. Here's where combustion is happening. And by the way, this is called pyrolysis. Down here is the combustion zone. We're getting it really hot, burning up the fuel there, and just in this one specific location. Above here, there's almost no oxygen at all. So that's why we're getting pyrolysis. There's not combustion. We're just using heat to dry off the wood, drive off volatiles, break it down. Then it's going through our combustion zone. The oxygen is being used up. And then right around down in here, we're getting into what's called reduction, where the carbon and the water molecules and the carbon dioxide and the carbon are interacting to make the gas that we're going to use to run engines. And what I've done is I've constructed this little see-through box to act as our model. So if you imagine this box being, your hopper, pyrolysis, combustion, and reduction zone, and then here's our grate, I'm going to now show you how to fill up a gasifier properly so you can get proper operation. This is something that, man, if you do it wrong, you can have a perfectly good operating unit, and it's not going to work for you because you're just not getting enough surface area, or you're getting so much surface area because you have fines that you're actually blocking the flow. So there's always this dance between creating enough suction and velocity in the system and having good flow, but also having enough surface area where the carbon and all the gases are interacting to get reduction and get the burnable gases that we're going to use in our engines. Now you notice I have a grate here. This has a 3/8 grate. This is good for chunk fuel. What's going to happen is, our charcoal is going to sit on it, but gases can still flow through the rest of the system. Now obviously the charcoal is not going to be that big down here. So what I want to do when I'm first filling up a gasifier is I want to put a layer of fuel that's big enough it's not going to fall through. So I'm going to start by adding fuel there. This. So now you see we've got a little bit of fuel there on the bottom, and then I'm going to go to smaller fuel, smaller charcoal. And if you notice, the size of the charcoal I'm using, just about the size of the end of my thumb. That's a good size, and I'll show you why right now. So here I have 2 pieces of charcoal, same size. Now you look at this one, has a certain amount of surface area. But now if I smash this one, now you tell me which one has more surface area. It's the one I just smashed. Now surface area is going to help with our reactions. And it's also going to keep the spaces, the interstitial spaces in between, smaller. So if I have a bunch of big pieces of charcoal, there's not a lot of surface area, and there's gaps in between. And in those huge gaps is where the unrefined gases can flow through. And that's something we don't want to happen. We want those gases reformed down properly, which I'll explain. So, as we're filling our gasifier up, we want just nice small pieces, but not dust, because dust will clog it. There won't be enough room for the air to get by. There we go. That was a little dusty. Here I've zoomed in on this transparent model I've made. You see at the bottom how the charcoal is fine, and I work our way up, and then right about the combustion zone is where it's going to start getting bigger, And now you see char mixed with brown where it's pyrolysis is happening, and then you see fresh wood, and that's where the drying process is happening. So what I've done is I've mimicked the strata in a gasifier. All right, so now you're going to get a peek inside of how a gasifier really operates. I don't know how good the resolution is going to be because there's a lot of fine detail here and it's black, but I'll try to guide you through it. Now what we've done is we've filled our gasifier up with fine char, but not dust, and the char is getting bigger and bigger until we're getting up into partially pyrolyzed and fresh wood. And we did that to mimic what's going on in nature in this natural thermal decomposition that's happening here. The reason this charcoal is getting smaller here is it's combusting and making carbon dioxide, but the reason it's getting smaller down here is it's reducing. The carbon is actually ripping the gases apart, and then the newly formed gas is going through the rest of the system, and that's why you see the charcoal getting smaller and smaller and smaller until it's basically ash or it's fine dust that shakes through the grate. So when you talk about reduction, that's what's happening. So we have air coming in, creating hot combustion. Above the heat, but no oxygen, or no appreciable oxygen, is driving off the vapor and the gases in the wood, leaving carbon. Here it's just drying. And below, once the oxygen is consumed, all the stuff that's been driven off is now coming and raking across that hot carbon and being thermally shifted until we have hydrogen and carbon monoxide gases that are going to go through our system and be burned in our engine. All right, the reduction process is something that really escapes a lot of people when they're first getting into gasification. It's just such a different thing. So I'm going to show you what's going on in your gasifier. I'm going to redraw our hourglass shape we had. Let's make that nice and thick. So we're bringing our air in, creating combustion here. That air, that O2, is interacting with the carbon. It's releasing heat. You know, air and charcoal, that creates a lot of heat. It's exothermic. And some of the byproduct there is going to be CO2. And of course, the drying process up here that's drying those wood chunks I was just talking about is creating water vapor. So we have water vapor, we have carbon dioxide, there's some inert nitrogen in the system that's also in the air. And of course, we have those partially broken down hemicellulose and lignin compounds that are reforming themselves as tars. So all of those things are coming through here. Some of it's being broken down here, but a lot of it's being broken down here in the reduction area. And so we have H2O, the water vapor, interacting with C. So we have H2 and we have C, or H2O, I'm sorry, in C. Well, this carbon is actually grabbing the O off the H2O. It said, give me that. So now we have H2, which is hydrogen, and we have carbon monoxide, it's burnable gas. So that's what's happening to the water vapor. Now we have CO2, and more carbon. We have C. So that carbon is saying, give me one of those O's. So we end up with 2 molecules of carbon monoxide. So one of the things you'll notice, your char is getting smaller because it's coming in, it's being combusted, exothermic, releasing heat. We're using that heat to decompose the wood and the tars. Then it's going into a place where the oxygen is used up, and now these hot carbon are grabbing molecules from the gases flowing by, and that's called reduction, and it's reducing the size of the charcoal because that carbon is grabbing onto something and hitching a ride. It's going in the gas stream. That carbon says, whoop, grab an O, whoa, down, pretty soon it's in your engine. And this is endothermic. This is actually consuming heat, and that's a good thing because it starts to cool our gases down before it goes to the rest of our system. So just think of the carbon as a hitchhiker. It's grabbing onto an O, and that O is, making its way out, and it's taking some of itself with it and going out through the rest of the system. So that's as simple as I can explain reduction. And if you have any more questions, just leave a comment for the video, and I'll try to answer as best I can.